Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Vibhuti Jha. And, as always, we focus on an issue and we try to take a deep dive. We try to understand the impact and implication of what is happening to us as a community, as individuals, and in the country, society, and community we live in. Of late, we have been, becoming more and more aware of things that are happening, which are so much anti-Hindu. The thing that bothers me is simple, that we Hindus are, and I'm very proud to say that, point out to me if I'm wrong, is that we are the most peace-loving, law-abiding, not law-breaking community anywhere in the world, immigrant community in the world. Yet, for reasons best known to those who hate us, and I dare use the word hate, because I feel that you can't have such strong opinions or views about Hindus, virtually denying our existence and calling us by names, unless you have hate for us. And that's something which is very responsible. At the same time, having lived away from home from the age of 9 or 10, I also believe in one more thing, and that is my own responsibility about what happens to me. I'm a strong believer in the concept that whatever happens to me, we are responsible for that. I am responsible for that. I'm just as I'm here by choice. Nobody has forced me to be on the TV or doing this show. I exercise my choice. So I want to talk about this issue rather deeply, about why do we hear about so many instances of dismantling Hindutva? Why are we hearing about that we are idol worshippers, we are evil people, we do all kinds of things by every faith and religion, including earlier it used to be only a racist phenomenon. Now we are witnessing a very interesting thing. People who will form organizations called Hinduism for Human Rights, they are the ones who hate Hindus most. They have hijacked names in such a manner that they seem to be reasonable, while they are so much more unreasonable with the Hindu cause. To discuss this matter in great depth, I have great pleasure in welcoming two of my very serious friends, who I like for the simple reason that they are able to articulate with sense and logic, emotion aside. Rajeev Singh from West Coast in San Francisco area. He's actively with the Hindu American Foundation, a senior person in the Hindu American Foundation, in addition to his professional career. And Dr. Praveen Sinha, a professor in Orange County, and he's very deeply involved, and he has got involved in the recent past, earlier having been not so keenly involved. But the attacks that have happened awakened his thought that why? So I will start with you, Dr. Sinha, because you shared with me a tweet, and that's what is the beauty of the technology-driven era right now, is that we get to know things instantly. So share the thoughts you have on this subject matter. You are mute.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vibhuti, and thank you for having me on the show. Before we get started, let me share the context in which we are talking. So just a couple of days back, a couple of tweets that appeared that got the attention of a lot of people. So I'm going to share the screen and show you those tweets. Here it is. Okay. So this person is Melinda Byerly. She's a CEO of a company in Silicon Valley. She is a host of a podcast. She is proud to be a blue-collar kid, venture beat, growth tactics, writer, active on LinkedIn, very large following. She's followed by 16,300 people. So that's a pretty large number on Twitter, sorry. And she is following 3,400 Interesting thing is, of those 16,300 people who are following her, is our House Speaker, Nancy Pelosi. So she's not simply anybody who's ranting and raving. She's a very well-established person with impressive credentials in Silicon Valley, as well as politically, as well as influencer, because she's got podcast and Fiddle headquarters, that's her company. I don't know exactly what they do, but she is all over and very active in social media. Here is the tweet that got our attention, and that appeared like ranting, but it's worth going through. So I hope your audiences, Vibhuti and Rajeev, can you see it?
I can see it, and I think on the screen people would be able to see this very clearly. So let's take this up, and this is an yeah.
Yeah, so it's all about ranting against immigrants, and specifically immigrants in Silicon Valley, in which names are taken. One name is Indian, and then later they're referred as non-whites, which happens to be brown, and Silicon Valley, as you know, is full of Indians. So the first is what the F is up with immigrants who came to Silicon Valley, get rich, and suddenly decide that America needs less taxes, education, and social support. So she's attacking them on their policy position, because it's clearly a policy position that when some people are comfortable with paying more taxes, some don't want to pay more taxes. It has nothing to do with anything else except your personal belief about what is the role of the government. The libertarians, the conservatives have always, it's not Indians, it's always white Americans all over the world believe in lesser role of government and lesser taxes. And they also do not believe in a large welfare state, which is what these people allegedly appear to be holding the position. And she's very angry about that. Apparently, that is not her position. Well, those can be fine. You can differ on position. But let's go further down and see what she actually says. Peter Thiel and Vinod Khosla. Vinod Khosla is one of the very early tech immigrants to USA, and he's very, very established in Silicon Valley. And she says, and the list goes on, just make your money and go. Stop trying to turn America into a caste system / apartheid system you came from. So this is a very direct attack on, first and foremost, a rant which says, get the hell out of here, and you don't belong to this country. The fact of the matter is both Peter Thiel and Vinod Khosla are American citizens. They have been living and doing things in this country, and they have contributed to this economy, I would say 1,000 times more than what she has. But the ranting turns into slurs which are racial, casteist, and Hinduphobic. So trying to put caste system / apartheid system you came from. I don't know where Peter Thiel came from, but the caste system is a direct attack on Hinduism without understanding what it really means. And Vibhuti, you can clarify that later when we come to it. So the rant starts, and then it says you came here under a system, it made you rich, now you dislike it. It is bullshit, go home.
Go home.
I mean, this is just pure simple. I remember President Trump making some statements like that about illegal immigrants under a very different context, and he was labeled with 1,000 derogatory labels were given to him with no reports for him to even respond. He was responding, referring to illegal. These are American citizens who are being asked to get the hell out of here. Then she's especially interesting is the non-white flavor of this kind of rich tech immigrant. Non-white is Indians, many of whom seem particularly determined to stop their children from learning the history of race in America. I have no idea where the hell it comes from. She has zero understanding that the race part, which is the African Americans, Indians were the first to fight for their rights in Africa. And that was Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, the father of nation of India, who fought for the rights of Africans, fought against apartheid in South Africa before he came to fight for the independence of India. So zero knowledge of history, but plain simply throwing any possible ugly allegations, hoping they will stick. Finally, my advice to other states and countries is don't let these kind of parasites gain a foothold in your area. So she's calling them parasites now. Tax the living shit out of them and see them for what they are, strip miners who will not rest till they ruin everything. These are very hate speeches. Such people, if anybody on the right even makes 10% of this, even a couple of lines of this, will be immediately canceled. But these people are operating with full immunity making hatred, racially charged lies, bigotry, you name it, everything is in this. But this woman is absolutely fine. Nobody, there has been attack on her on Twitter, but this is from the moderates. But her wing, I do not hear Nancy Pelosi stopped following her. I did not see any liberal Democrat making a statement against her, because apparently that's the part she belongs to. So that's putting the context. I hope I've made it sufficiently clear what this is all about. In my mind, it's plain simple hatred. And this hatred really has no place in American society. But the extreme liberal left wing of the Democratic Party is operating with immunity right now under Biden administration. And Nancy Pelosi is one of the enablers. So I'll stop here. I'll let Rajeev ji get in and I'll talk more about it later.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, this is the screen, and this is not something that happened 20 centuries ago. This is November 7th, as late as a few days ago. The point of the matter here is that there is, as you rightly said, Praveenji, that there is hate spewing from there, venom coming out against us, against a community that has contributed so much to America. And this is so shamelessly attacking us. You know, she just mentioned Peter Thiel's name, but here is as you rightly said, the amount of hatred which exists in this entire diatribe is just about, tax the living shit out of them. My God, I mean, this is a language, if you are right, as you rightly said, if you and I make this, we will be hounded out of the country. I mean, they will get after us, forget about canceling. They will try to dismantle us, including canceling. So Rajeev ji, I mean, we can get off the screen now. We will share it with people. It's already there, Praveen ji. So
okay, let's stop here.
Yeah. So this is the point which I am trying to say, that today, because of technology, we know. And this particular thing, we are talking on the TV. It will also go over the social media. The world will know about it. As you rightly said, what kind of a CEO is she? I do not know. Whether it's a one-man operation, one-woman operation, and calling the company CEO, that's perfectly fine. But the important part is Nancy Pelosi is following her. But the point is, how do we respond to that? Some people would say, Jane bhi do yaro, it's a one person's rant. But it is not a one person's rant. It shows historical tradition that we are part of the racist attack and we are undermined in this country. I have not heard any TV channel, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, talk about us, the contribution of us Indians. I've never seen them. But MSNBC has 2 Muslims or 3 Muslims doing a 1-hour weekly show there. So equity and equality is for them, not for us, because we are not anything near Abrahamic faith from there. Rajeev, your thought on it? That this attack that is happening on things Hindu and Hindus, it is becoming more malignant and it is becoming more and more hateful. Can we take it for granted? What do we do about it?
Well, first of all, namaste Praveen ji, namaste Vibhuti ji, and namaste to all the viewers. I would like to build a little bit on what you said about the language. Now, let us first acknowledge that this is not coming from just any random person on the street. This is coming from what you would imagine as a demographic that would least bother rant, but more importantly, would also not want to jeopardize their reputation and their business by indulging in such a rant. So to not only call out immigrants in a country whose foundation is immigration, but then to call them parasites, well, that is an indication of hate. If that is not hate, I don't know what hate is and where hate begins. I think what she has not suggested, but is probably going to be the next incarnation of a rant like this in the future is going to be somebody suggesting that we should wear our patches with our religion on our sleeves, or a yellow patch or a yellow star or something like that, right? It just falls a tad short of that suggestion. What do we do about it? Well, so I'm tempted to get into the solutioning mode, but I want to highlight something very interesting about this episode. And what is interesting to me is that this is a question this time around that not you and I or Praveenji should be answering or thinking, but somebody like Vinod Khosla should be thinking about it, right? So all this while, the people that this lady calls out to be the rich immigrants were under the impression and assumption that money does all the talking in America. Well, that might be true, but at the same time, money doesn't guarantee your safety and security and reputation, or you being called a slur or whatever. So to me, this is a question that not only all of us should be asking, but especially the so-called affluent Indian Americans, Hindu Americans should be asking. So what we do at this point, it's very straightforward. This is a message to the community, regardless of your economic and financial status, which is that we are under attack. Let us take this seriously. Let us also not forget that the community in the United States, the Hindu American community, probably psychologically is in a space where the Indian American community in Uganda was a year prior to Dada Idi Amin's ascent to the role that he usurped. And things changed in 7 months or a year. So what do we do and how do we respond? Well, let's start to talk seriously about the threat that we are under. I'll stop there for now.
You are so right, and I think coming to the solution. I mean, knowing the problem, knowing what we know, as my favorite phrase, knowing what all we know now, what must we do, and where do we go from here, is important. And since this CEO has used a public platform, a global platform, to use the choice of words, and included Honorable Vinod Khosla ji in this particular diatribe of hers, gives us an opportunity to reach out, as you very rightly pointed out, Rajeev ji, that where are the successful CEOs of the variety that this woman talks about? They need to comment on this, or should they not? And because there is a corporate responsibility, I totally understand. People भी लोगों का काम है कहना, कुछ तो लोग कहेंगे. You can't be responding to every tweet a twit puts on a Twitter. So the point of the matter is that how does one take cognizance of the fact? Because extremes drive the middle. So Praveenji, you are in a university teaching scenario, and which is where a lot of problem exists. The brainwashing of the leftist variety happens big time. And your take on it, which Rajeev ji said, how does one, the senior people, the big names, the 100 CEOs who are Indian origin, of Adobe to Microsoft to Google and whatever else, where do we go from here? Are they also part of this racket?
Well, the way I think, since you brought out universities, let me bring it something in perspective. Universities are very safe places. We do not allow any, even hint of a hate speech. We zero tolerance for that. You cannot do this. This is a very serious set of statements against a community with serious threats about leaving, calling them parasites, calling them names. We see this kind of language used sometimes against an individual, but this is against a whole community. This definitely qualifies as a hate speech without any doubt. Let me put a very simple situation here. Just replace the browns with blacks. Just turn this around a little bit. It is directed towards Indians. Let's make it if it's directed against African Americans. All hell will break loose in one day. Twitter will cancel her account immediately. She will never see the day of light if she does that. But it's not happening to us. So I think it's a serious concern, because I think to some extent we have been complacent. Sab chalta hai kya, who cares? No, I think we should care, because I think Rajeev ji mentioned what are these big guys doing. Vinod Khosla will be absolutely fine. Nothing will happen to him. He will move on. He's a billionaire. Zero effect of all these things. The effect will happen to average techie in Silicon Valley, because they will be mistreated. They will be perceived with this lens that these are parasites. They came here to exploit our system. They come here despite the enormous contributions that Indian Americans have made and Indians who are on H-1B visa are making. This is what will stick in the minds of an average individual. Don't forget, she's an MBA from Cornell. She's MBA from Cornell. She has a very large following. When she makes statements like these 33,000 people who will not comment on it will say she is right. We just were afraid to say it. She's brave enough to say it. To some extent, that was the reason for Trump's following as well.
Right.
A lot of people felt that he was saying things that they could not otherwise say. But I don't think the worst of Trump's rants came anywhere close to this. Anywhere close to this. So I think this matter is serious. We cannot rely on these guys who are like Vinod Khosla and Sundar Pichai and who's the other guy?
Satya Nadella and others.
They will do nothing because they're too concerned about their own positions. They will fight for any other minority, but when it comes to them, they will simply run with tail stuck between their legs because they are just basically cowards. There's no ifs and buts about it. We have seen them hundreds of times. So the Indian American community, if they rely on them, you're basically the saying which I've said multiple times, andhe aage roye apne na khoye. You're not going to get anything from these cowards who are basically busy minting money for themselves. So let it be. I'm not concerned about them. Not everybody has to be involved, but we as community have to look at this more seriously. We have to see that we take actions to not let this go away unnoticed, and she goes on with her life after a few days. So that's my take on it. I'll let Rajeev speak on this.
Yeah,
Vibhuti, I would like to add
Sure.
something to it.
Sure, go ahead.
Praveenji brought up a very good point, which is that I didn't check that handle today, but it probably still is active. Why has this Twitter handle not been deactivated yet for hate speech?
Exactly.
The bigger question, though, is that even if we do want to get this Twitter handle deactivated, the conundrum and the fog in front of us is, where do we start? Who do we reach out to? Who will come to support us? Questions like that. So now an even bigger question is that if Vinod Khosla and Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadellas of the world will actually not only not do something about it, but rather conveniently avoid this conversation, then who speaks on our behalf? And that is where I want to stress upon an ever-growing and more immediate need and urgency for us as Hindu Americans to invest in our own advocacy, to build up our own organizations. Many organizations exist, but organizations such as HAF that have existed for 18 years doing just that. This is the time for us to amplify our voices, to support organizations like HAF who can legally do something about this. I'll stop right now.
No, you made a very important point, which is what has been the bane of Hindu community. Who will build the cat? I'm not affected. This is what Praveenji mentioned. Vinod Khosla and the likes of him, they are already multi-billionaires. And that is the accusation this woman makes on them. They came, game the system, and take your money and go home. You know, she's openly saying it. Whether she's a one-person company CEO, I don't care. But she has been in Cornell. There's 16,000 people following her. 7th November, this tweet came. There is not one reference to Twitter by any one of us. And that's the point which I'm very concerned. We are talking here. We are talking about it. I think thousands of people are listening to us and watching this. They have seen that tweet. And I'm going to work on that tweet from my side. What's the worst that can happen? You know, like, do your worst, as sometimes they say. The important part is that you very rightly said, who will build a cat? And that advocacy has to happen, both at individual as well as collective levels. So I'm asking Hindu community activists, where are you today? If you are hiding behind an organization, social and cultural organization, because of the 5013C9 tax status, exercise your freedom of speech, because nobody can abuse you. Nobody can abuse you and say things in this derogatory manner. So, and this has to be highlighted. We must copy this to all media. As I said, we are not talked about in media. Think about it from this point of view, that when I hear CNN and other television channels use the word guru, pandit, and mantra, the three words which are very, very dear to our practice and our way of life. We take our gurus seriously. We believe in mantra. We know, we talk about these words, guru, pandit. There is a reference to the context in our life. And they use it in a very veiled slay of negativity to that. And that is where you affect and impact a culture. So whether it happens, even in media, we are not taken seriously. We are never talked about. How do we build that cloud? Advocacy. Praveenji, your thought.
Well, we came at a time when we were a very small group of people. We were mostly students. We had literally no power, but we were doing the right things. But now that Indians have done so well, we have become a target of those minorities which have not done well, or those who hate Hindus. And I would say the latter is more than the former. America is a very accommodative country in my mind. It's a very generous country. It lets people from other countries come, become part of their fabric, maintain their identity, and still contribute to the economy. And I think it's the most accepting and generous country in the whole world in my mind. I don't think any country can even come close to USA. That is the reason I settled here. When I took my citizenship, that was the big reason. But so coming back to your question, we have become sort of object of envy for other groups other immigrant groups who came from abroad, did not do that well. They see that our power is potentially soft power and otherwise is helping India, the country we came from. And that is a concern to a lot of groups which have strong agenda. So what is needed, to answer your question explicitly, we need more organization. Indians have to collectively become more cognizant of what is happening. We should not take these events lightly. We should make our community get aware of it. We should demand, various campaigns, like ask Twitter to cancel our account. This should be terminated, effective immediately. It is still active, but it should be taken out. Twitter has not even given her a warning, I have a sense. So we have to assert our collective power. It will require political organization. It will require social organization. I think things are happening. As you mentioned, I had nothing to do with politics or anything. I was leading my life happily in my own cocoon till about a year and a half ago, when I decided that my community and me, not particularly specifically me, but the whole community is being attacked. So I became politically organized, and you're quite aware of my group, Indian Americans of Irvine and Orange County. And that group is growing, and a lot of people have learned a lot. We are a very educational group. We don't do anything except educate each other about the threats that our community faces. And I think it will take time, but I think the Indian community is learning slowly. I think after dismantling Hindutva, the number of people I've heard who were energized, who contributed to political campaigns, who went out to demonstrate, was unparalleled to what I've seen in the past. So I think the answer is that our community is waking up. There is need for organizations to emerge. And I will reiterate what Rajeev Singh was saying earlier, is that HAF is a wonderful organization. It has done terrific work in terms of dealing with these threats from all possible directions. And I think we need to support them. We need to have more people join HAF and support it so that we can speak with a unified voice on the religion side. We need more organizations on the political side so that the political organization can also take place. But a lot is happening in the background, and I believe more organizations will emerge as time passes. And I think our interests will be protected. There's no shortage of resources. There's only shortage of will, and that will is changing now. So I expect that in the next couple of years, you will see a very huge difference.
It's very nice to hear that. And I hope it happens, definitely, because what is important here is that when you begin to see trends, I'm a big observer of trends. I worked with a study group whose only job was that we used to look at strategic trend analysis with every sense of the term, with reference to society, technology, economics, and politics. Because everything that happens in one domain impacts the other domain. So it is intertwined. Nothing is isolated. It's interconnected. And thanks to technology, we live in a remarkably small world, even though the cities may be large still. So the point which I'm trying to drive at is that last presidential election was an eye-opener for me of sorts. Being in the media, having been involved in the process, I was very stunned. I was disappointed. When Tulsi Gabbard, who became the candidate, who was a candidate for Democratic Party, she was hounded by her own party. And her own party made an attack on her that she belonged to a cult religion. She is a Hindu. There were some Hindu named RSS kind of people who were donating money to her. There was a guy who was a young man who was part of a Republican candidate's this campaign, and he had to be asked to leave because his father was Modi supporter. It is very important for us to become aware that this Tulsi Gabbard was virtually hounded out. I give her credit for one thing. She's the one woman who has spoken against Bangladesh atrocities and killings of Hindus in Bangladesh. None of the 4 congressmen who represent us said a word. I did not come to know. If you correct me if I'm wrong.
I will correct you. The 2 congressmen that we had from Orange County, they both tweeted.
No. But I'm aware of that. I'm talking about the 4 Desi named congressmen. I'm
Okay.
referring to Desi named congressmen, right? I'm not referring to, but Tulsi Gabbard came out, although she's not in the Congress. I'm saying, and she's receiving rave support from non-Hindus as well in a big way, that wish we had a system that allowed people like you to become the president. My point is, Rajivji, is that going forward, how do we mobilize? Because we are, after all, 3 million people here at most, including the people who are Hindus in name only and anti-Hindu, which we know very well.
So, Vibhutiji, I think the question you have asked is just as much a question to me as it is to you and possibly many other individuals. But we have to be hopeful of things improving and working out. And I'm not a baseless optimist, because what I believe in is that you have to first feel the heat for you to get up. Between the attack on Hindus with on the forefront of caste, and I'm just talking about 2021, by the way, not even 2020 or year prior. I'm not even going to Tulsi Gabbard, and I think you were talking about Amit Jani. I'm not talking about any of that. So just in 2021, caste, dismantle global Hindutva, and now open slurs or Hindus being attacked by tweets like what we are talking about. I think these are catalysts. I think we at all levels, in all stratas of the Hindu society, need to be told and reminded that we actually are living in a delusion when we think that this is a utopia, that there are no social challenges in this country, that just because United States is the land of immigrants, it's a very easy slide in and build yourself up and become comfortable and prosper story, the American dream, so to say. The thing that we have to be reminded as a community in this country is that every immigrant community in this country in the last 100 to 150 years has gone through some sort of discrimination, has not been accepted, be it the Polish, be it the German, be it the, we can name any, right? The question though is that what would it have taken for the Hindu Americans who are mostly associated with higher educational sectors or high income groups, what would it take for them to realize that you are yet another immigrant community, the newest immigrant community, in a day and age where strife is around the world, where crises are abound? You would be ignorant. I would even call you are in a dream if you think that with all of that happening around the world, that there won't be a question raised on your identity and why you are over here. So that said, what does it take? Well, what it takes is, unfortunately, for us to become more than just keyboard Hindus or WhatsApp Hindus at this point. We have talked about this before. At this point, what should I do as an individual? Well, I want to take a screenshot of that tweet and send it to whoever I possibly can in elected offices, in temples, to my friends, and say, and tell them that this is representing you. This is a microcosm of what is about to hit you. It is happening to our kids in universities. And by the way, Dr. Sinha said that universities are safe space. Well, turns out they are not. They are not becoming or holding up to that reputation anymore, from what we heard from DGH, right? So yeah, while we still talk about bullying at school, we're actually as adults being bullied at workplace. We are being bullied in universities. We are being bullied all over in political spaces. Our voices are being shut down. So what do we do? Well, we have to take examples like this and educate as many people around us of the discrimination that exists against us. Just because you live in a decent house and drive a decent car in a good neighborhood in a suburbia does not mean that you're safe. We have to get past that sense of security that a lot of us believe we have. We do not, right? At the same time, if you run an organization, start a petition of some sort, even if you can, collect signatures, send it to your local congressperson, congressional representative, send it to law enforcement. It's simple things like this. Go to your police department, send this tweet to your chief of police and tell them that this is the rhetoric outside. This is how hate is being fomented against us. And it is only a matter of time before somebody looks at this and decides to do something with it. It could be a hit and run on the street. It could be a disagreement over parking space some other day, or an altercation in the park. But this is happening. This is real. People say, well, what is Hinduphobia? Does it really exist? What is an example? We should make this the poster child example of Hinduphobia, because this is not coming from some so-called right-wing radical individual. This is coming from the liberal, progressive, educated elites of the society, who, by the way, also supposedly are in government today. So despite all of that, this is the hate being inflicted upon us. And we have to use this as an example to spread the word and raise the awareness, not only to outsiders, but within our own community.
So can I add something more to it?
Yeah. Please do. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, let me correct the university part. I think the universities, by and large, still are safe spaces. What has happened lately is troubling. The manifestation of those actions is not yet reflected. And if we don't do anything, they will be reflected and we will feel the heat. So I agree with you, Rajeev, totally, but I spoke as of now. Tweets like this, other attempts to divide us will eventually show up, and our children in college will be subjected to this kind of a hate pattern. Let me just say a few things about this, because we are sort of coming closer to an end now. First and foremost, we need to understand that in the past, when statements like this were made, like if you go back to early 80s, there were campaigns like, dot busters for Indian women wearing bindis and all that. And since then, and even a little bit later after that, the impression has always been that this kind of a hate comes from the ultra right-wing, conservative Christians, you name it, white trash, whatever you want to call it, comes from there. And to some extent, that's what our Indian community still believes. They have all these names for it, for the people who hate them, but by and large, it's always associated with the conservative Republicans who are intolerant. I never agreed with that, but that's the thing you'll hear among Indians, who are 85% Democrat even as we speak. But I want my fellow Indians to understand that this is not a Republican Party. Actually, if anything, Republican Party at this time is very, very pro-India, pro-Hindu, and pro-Indian interests. This is coming from a very powerful wing of the Democratic Party, which Indian Americans in this country have traditionally supported, contributed, followed, and did everything for them to succeed. It is time for us to reevaluate, because if this tweet had not come out, we would not have known what is the element of hate that is brewing in that extreme left wing of the Democratic Party, which is the so-called progressive wing, which has a lot of very dangerous elements in it. And this hate speech that is given out by this woman, which I have a zero doubt in my mind that she's a progressive liberal. She is not alone. She's representing a very sizable portion of the Democratic Party, which does not view successful Indians as anything but, I won't use the word she used, but that's what they view them as. Leeches, suckers, selfish, and they're here to make money. That's the way they view them. We are not viewed as an ideal minority, like the way you described us, Vibhutiji, in the beginning. Despite our record of being a good citizen, no crime, paying substantial taxes, and doing what is called the typical American dream, we still are demonized, and will be demonized more as the time passes. So we need to understand who our real enemy is here. It's not the Republicans. I want to make it very, very clear. I have been an independent for a very long time, and I'm still an independent. But these attacks are not coming from Republicans. If anything, if you look at issue after issue, when it comes to India, Republican senators are always voting for India. But on the Democratic side, the liberal wing has gone too far. And if you're a liberal Democrat, I will not say become a Republican, but at least dig deeper and demand more from your party if you are a Democrat and want to remain a Democrat, that this party that you're supporting cannot take such strong positions against Indian Americans and get by with it. It's your job to wake up and take action.
That's a very powerful appeal to the Indians to really wake up. If you can't wake up now, and if you can't smell the coffee, you are doomed. You are writing your own story of destruction. So, for example, recently a friend of mine received an invitation, a Hindu friend of mine, I'll be very specific, from a Muslim friend of his, asking him to join a forum of Muslim Democratic Club of New York, the first ever Muslim Democratic Club of New York, and specifically targeting conversation on gerrymandering and managing the districts to ensure that they are voted back to power time and again. Create a platform. What do the Hindus do? Nothing. So there is an apathetic attitude amongst us. As you rightly said, we live well, we are happy in my community, I'm safe. But no, this is coming to you. You have to understand that. All the viewers must remember this. Just because you live in a safe, gated community doesn't mean you are safe. You are being targeted in this manner that you saw. And the reason why we are spending so much time on this is that we are facing not the Holocaust kind of an extinction problem, but we are facing an ostracization, as we are called, that these people don't believe in, they are the pigpens of the East. They come here to just grab the, things like that. And they make fun of us. They ridicule us. They talk about it from that point of view. And these are the people 85% of the Hindus are supporting, the Democratic Party. I'm an independent too, just like you, Praveenji. I'm an independent, but I have the ability to see through what is the real stuff. I'm not saying Republicans are 100% hunky-dory. There is a problem. There are hardcore right-wingers there who don't believe Jesus is the only way. They have no ability to absorb or understand the plurality of our way of life. So all the folks who are watching today, this is a wake-up call. We have been talking about this on my show for a very long time, that unless and until we awaken, and I use Vivekanandaji's Avahan to everybody, awaken, arise, and assert. And the fourth one is mine, A, act. Because if you don't act, none of it matters. It's time for us to create our clout for whatever it is worth. Let's put a battle that we will not tolerate this kind of a nonsense that is heaped on us remarkably undeservingly. We live in a society that preaches equality, but practices discrimination openly against us, right? हम पे उद्धार कर रहे हैं आप? No, sir, not at all. Rajeev ji, you have the last word for the day.
Can I just add quickly one thing?
Please do.
Yeah, then we'll be. I think it's good that you brought the example of Muslim community. If you go back to the history of Muslim community, they were also complacent like us. They had a 9/11 moment. And after 9/11, there was so much of a hatred for Muslims in this country. They suffered a lot, but they woke up. They organized. The example that you gave me of the Muslim Democratic Party, that these are all result of efforts that happened after that community faced hatred. So in some sense, we can learn from the Muslim community.
Right.
We can learn from the Jewish community that when they faced hatred, they organized and they basically became more resilient. There is a need for Indian Democrats to have a Hindu Democratic Party platform like the way you mentioned for the Muslim. They must do that because if they don't do it, our interests will be compromised. So I think that point that you made is a very valid one. We can take the example of Jewish and Muslim community, how they organized, how they became resilient after facing discrimination. We are facing it now. I think there was a joke one time one comedian made, which I heard, which I remember very well. He said, in America, there's always a tag game. You are it. Somebody gets tagged and you have to run and tag it somebody else. And that was shortly after 9/11. And he told laughingly to Muslims, you're tagged now. You better clean yourself, otherwise you will be it. I think we are it at this time. And I think I'm sufficiently sure that our community can fight back. And I hope we don't hand the tag to somebody else. That will be very unfortunate, but somehow it has followed that pattern. So I'll stop here, but kudos to the Muslim community for being organized. We need to do the same. That's what I will say.
Yeah, we'll come to that. Yeah. Rajeev ji, your thoughts.
Vibhuti ji, this has been a very good conversation. I personally like it for the fact that we are not looking at the problem solely from the Hindu lens or from a victim lens, but rather are talking constructively and invoking what the Muslims did and what the Jewish society did, how they face such challenges. In the spirit of being constructive, there's two things immediately that I think we can do. So we should leverage this as an opportunity. First thing is that every Hindu individual, male or female, doesn't matter, needs to take a screenshot of this tweet and send it to some other person and ask everybody else, is this the Holocaust moment for us? Because you invoked that term. And let me tell you, it did not start in 1936 or 1937. Holocaust started in people's heads and brains and minds 20 years prior to that. So is this the moment where the hatred against us is being injected in people around us? The second thing I want people to do with this screenshot is sit down with their kids and tell them that this is bullying. This is an example of their faith under attack. This is how subtlety has transformed into overt hatred. This is what anti-immigrant hate looks like. This is what religious hatred looks like. This is what creates Holocaust. Don't ask anything to them, just educate them. 5th grader, 6th grader, 7th grader related to bullying. Daddy or his faith, mom or his faith is being bullied by people of other faith. by people with certain political ideology. That is how we need to capitalize on this, in addition to everything else. That's my thought.
Thank you both of you for being here. And I think it was a very useful conversation. We need to have these kind of conversations more and more to create awareness, awaken people, make them active, make them act. Because unless and until we have the ability to articulate a point of view, and let's do it. And I think it has been remarkably constructive. And as you rightly pointed out, both of you pointed out, that people go through their time, there is spin, there is a tag that happens. Each one, even the Italians went through their mafia tag, so Irish people went through their own thing. But here is a very interesting one. And that is that we have not yet, and you are right, post 9/11, the Muslims went through this entire, attack part. The important part is to understand that 9/11 didn't happen by a bunch of uneducated, illiterate, hungry people. It happened by a very motivated group of people who wanted to assert themselves. Whoever came in their way, they perished. That's the point which is important for us to know. And I want every Indian to know about it. Just because you have done well doesn't mean you are safe. It's not a threat, it's not a warning, but it's just to create a little bit of a light in your head. That just because we live in a gated community doesn't mean you are safe. Because what is at threat is our identity as to who we are, our own very existence. And one of the things, my favorite one is the science and technology is breaking the barriers, breaking the veil of ignorance and fear, which is where the religions are designed to, to handle the gullible. It is important. Science and technology is our biggest ally. Prime Minister Modi gave the most beautiful definition, modern definition of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam when addressing the International Solar Alliance. He said, "It's one sun, one earth, one grid." Remember that. That's the true meaning of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It's not about a family. The families are the most dissonant unit in ever existed. Brothers fight with brothers for ancestral properties. And they all have their own unitary family later on. So it's a very interesting concept. It's Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam means Mother Earth, her resources, it nurtures each one of us through air, sun, water, earth, and the resources. We are the true champions of that concept, and it's time for us to do that. Support your local organizations, challenge your local organizations. If the tax status prevents you from exercising your freedom of speech, of asking a question, to hell with that tax status, What is the money? It is $1,000 organizations. Come on. It's one of those NFL moments. Come on, man. So with this, I wish you have a great weekend, have a great week ahead, and talk to you next week. Thank you, Praveenji, and thank you, Rajeevji, for such a wonderful, enlightening conversation today.